Moonlight swirls across the sea in ripples and tides, a magical script in silver, rewritten every second. We stand on the cliffs, entranced, called home to the beauty and mystery of this world. Pearlescent and shimmering, moonlight on water, a call to the deep and the bright. We look up to the stars our world is born from. We breathe the sea air deep into our bodies. We remember life came from the ocean and the stars, and we call to the Pearl Pentacle. We remember love. We open the crowns of our heads to the starlight, to the great stream of existence, and feel it moving through us like a wave. Love. Love. Love is the law. We open to the land and the directions, and our very cells and atoms call through us, reminding us of their entire histories. We feel their laws deep and unfolding within us. The law of the ocean waves before us, the law of the moon's relationship with the ocean and the earth, the law of gravity holding our bodies to the rock. Law. Holding the law as sacred, we lean into wisdom. The deep ocean below the waves shimmers darkly beyond our vision. The depths. Some of us seek wisdom, some are blessed by wisdom, and some of us are torn apart by it. The ritual unfolds itself, and we call and speak into each point of the Pearl Pentacle, feeling ourselves held within it. This is a wisdom passed to us, a wisdom we inherit, a wisdom we participate in that opens the gate to liberty. The waves crash on the rocks, and we sing to them of moonlight, of pearl, of freedom from and freedom to. Liberation, liberté, liberty. Freed from the old and into the new, the liberty to step forth, to dare, to seek, to create. We are on the crest of a wave from liberty to knowledge. Here we have performed sacred rituals. Here we have wept. Here loved. Here we join hands, make offerings of rose petals and song and prayer. Here we taste the fruit, juice on our lips, mixed with sea spray. The moon overhead, the rock beneath, the sea making love with both, and we fragile humans daring initiation, daring to taste knowledge and be transformed by it. Love, law, wisdom, liberty, knowledge. The magic of the Pearl Pentacle awaits. That's at the very beginning of this book, and that's the kind of invitation to enter into the realms of the Pearl Pentacle. So first thing to say is that I co-wrote this book with my co-author, Fio Gede Parma, and this is in fact the third book that we've written together. So it's a good way to test a friendship, but we're still pretty good friends. And this book, as you're mentioning, it also has the benefit of 10 essays from other writers and reclaiming teachers in it. So the Pearl Pentacle, I've got several diagrams up here. Thank you everyone for assisting. The Pearl Pentacle is really, it's a very outward reaching pentacle, whereas the Iron Pentacle that it's based on is a much more internal, self-focused kind of interior working, magical working. And the practice, the tradition, the understanding is that working more and more with the Pearl Pentacle, and I'll talk in a minute about the points of those two pentacles, working more and more with the self in a way eventually transforms into working with others, working with community, whether it's magic, whether it's politics, whether it's creating community, whatever it is, that inner work translates, if you like, across into community. So including these 10 essays from members of our community really seemed in the spirit of Pearl. And what it's allowed us to do is create a book. Like Fio and I, know a few things. We've both written a few books. We've taught quite a lot of classes. We've got our own magic and practice and all of those things. And we are only 2 people. So to bring these other 10 people into this work has just created a book of such kind of depth and breadth that wouldn't be possible with just 2 of us. And so the book is divided into 5 sections for each of the 5 points. For example, in the love section of the book, we have Willow Kelly, who's a death doula as well as a reclaiming teacher and writer and many other things, are writing an essay on death within community, how to hold death as a community, as an act of love, as part of love, showing up to it. Like we couldn't have written that essay. We haven't done that work. We don't have that experience. In the Liberty section, we have Alex Iron, who's a gender scholar, writing on gender liberation. You know, it's not a scholarly essay as such, but they're bringing all of their understanding and experience and knowledge kind of into that essay. In the wisdom section, there's a beautiful young person called Hilary Buffum who grew up within the reclaiming tradition. So her parents were reclaiming witches and she was raised kind of within this particular magical tradition. And she's written a book on what it's like to grow up in a magical tradition, or this one particularly, called The Wisdom of a Tradition. Really beautiful essay. So just to be able to add these like extraordinary gems and gifts really enhances the book, and I think makes it reflect the spirit of the Pearl Pentacle, which is this somewhat outward focused pentacle. So I'm going to talk you through the pentacle itself. First of all, in the book there is a section on history. I did not write it. I'm not the historian, Fio is. But very briefly, the Pearl and Iron Pentacles came from the fairy tradition, usually spelled F-E-R-I, by Victor and Cora Anderson, who channeled or received or created or pulled together both of these pentacles, the Iron and the Pearl Pentacle. Many people who started the reclaiming tradition had been in or remained in the fairy tradition, and they kind of transited, you know, in their suitcases, so to speak, some of the practices, including the Iron and Pearl Pentacle, across to reclaiming. So the reclaiming tradition, which I belong to, as well as Fio and these other authors, it is a mixture of magic and witchcraft, personal development, and political activism. Those are the 3 kind of, sometimes called the 3 legs of the cauldron of reclaiming. And so reclaiming works with these pentacles quite differently than fairy, as far as I understand it, including that one of the things reclaiming does is work the pentacle magic through the body, like literally, like as in through the pentacle like this. So this would be the love point here, and then if I was following the pentacle, I would go down to law, across to wisdom, through the body, out to liberty, and down to, well, it's passion in the Iron Pentacle, knowledge in the Pearl, and then back up, and then if you want you can wrap it around. So I'm going to talk briefly through these points and then kind of address the magic of it and maybe do a couple of other little mini readings out of the book, and then apparently time for questions, all within an hour. Okay, so here we have the pentacle. Thank you for creating the second one. So the point of love, like obviously all of these points, they're just a single word, and yet we could write volumes about them. Volumes have been written about that concept. So love in the Pearl Pentacle, of course, when we're working with it, it might be our own individual love, like who we love, how we love, the love we're seeking, the love we're offering, whatever. But in the Pearl Pentacle, and maybe partly because it's up here, it is largely considered to be the essence of the universe, like the life force, the stream of the stars, the energy that creates and builds everything that happens, the kind of outward flowing of all of that we, little humans, participate in all sorts of ways. Maybe worship of the divine, maybe the love of our children, maybe showing up for community, all sorts of ways, maybe falling in love, writing love poetry, 100,000 ways. But anyway, that's the bigness of love, and that's the starting place in the Pearl Pentacle. So there's a variety of ways to travel around the pentacle, obviously around the circle, but we usually, in reclaiming, and again that's different than fairy, go through the pentacle. So we come down to this point, law, and little saying that sometimes flung about, love is the law. So you can look at that love, that vast kind of streaming energy that fuels everything, that is the force of the universe. it's very undifferentiated. Within law is where we start to differentiate, to kind of understand how stars are formed, how atoms work, gravity, the relationship of the moon to the sun, the seasons, how my body works, like all of the laws. So this is not so much human law, although you can, of course, also examine human law from that standpoint. Justice, truth, right, moral values, all those sorts of things. And sometimes, of course, we find ourselves on the so-called wrong side of the law. That is, we are standing up for something that we passionately believe, where there's a human or government law that says, no, you shan't protest in this way, or whatever it might be. So law can be quite a vexed area in that way. It's kind of my favourite point, a bit secretly, but lots of people do not enjoy the law point. The idea with any pentacle, and including this one, is that the points ideally balance with each other. So it's not that you would be amazingly strong in love and forget about law. Like the pentacle would kind of fall apart if you did that. So we try and work kind of evenly with them. So that's law, this structure, this the way things are, the laws that are, like what exists. And obviously that's available as, even inside you could look at like squares and how is the building held up and how do you create a book and all sorts of things. But outside in nature, which is a beautiful place to observe and work with law, I think it just goes and goes, really. So after law, we come up here, like that kind of fuels us in a way to wisdom, because within that love, the vastness, within those laws, like how it works, there starts to be a learning, there starts to be a wisdom. I understand that as the days get shorter, the trees cut off what they're sending to the leaves start to change colour and fall, like that it's not just love and law, there's actually a learning in there, there's actually a wisdom to be gained. And that wisdom, of course, with that example of the seasons changing, we can also apply to ourselves, to our own lives, magic, all sorts of things. So again, wisdom is a point that I think is there to be received, to be seen if we pay attention, when we show up, that we can draw those wisdoms from what we see. We come then across to liberty. So liberty, in the UK, I don't mind this word so much. In the US, I don't actually like this form of the word liberty, and I much prefer the French form liberté, where it's a cry for revolution, a cry for freedom, a passionate, impassioned cry for freedom. Some people use the word liberation instead. So here we are, kind of like designed by love, restrained by law, seeking wisdom, and then this thing gets thrown into the mix of liberty. Yeah, but are we free? Are we free to make our own choices? What does that even mean? How can we ever be liberated from any of these things we've talked about so far? And that balance of liberation, the question of individual choice or choice within community is like a complex one, and I think it's not one that is obvious. Although if you looked at nature, you could say like things are making choices all the time. The butterfly, who knows how much brain butterflies have, but they're nonetheless making a choice to stop at this flower or that one, to take off in this breeze or stay put, whatever it might be. So there is a certain liberty that we can say we all have, but then we can start to question it and maybe do the work of liberty, and in a variety of ways. For me, it's not so just given as the first three. And then we come down through here, working with those kind of more complex forms, we come down through here to knowledge. Now, knowledge, originally I thought this was a really boring term, like, you just read a book and you've got some knowledge. But to differentiate it from wisdom, I think, and harking back to a story about eating a piece of fruit, that knowledge is something that once it happens, once you gain it, you're not the same any longer. Like you can't go back from knowledge. You can't forget it. It's something that changes you. Like when you walk through that gate of initiation or knowing something, you can't unknow it. So it's something that changes you. And in magical traditions, of course, initiation and various levels of knowledge and sometimes secret knowledge or inherited knowledge or all sorts of things exist. So for me, this knowledge is kind of a bit of a gateway, and it's something that you have to usually earn or work for, and or there are consequences, sometimes both. So one way to get to that point is, the love that you open up to the universe, the law you observe, or you learn the laws. You take on the wisdom, say, of a tradition. You work with liberty, like what am I free to do? What am I not free? Where are my freedoms? And at some point you're ready for, or unready, who knows, to go through this gate of knowledge. So when you go through that gate, what happens in the pentacle is that you come back to love. So the pentacle, it's a moving thing. It always keeps moving. And so that piece of knowledge, or that gate that we pass through, initiates us into another level of deepening with love and with the Pearl Pentacle. So the Iron Pentacle underlies this. Some people say there's only one pentacle, that they're the same. And I talked before about, and you also referenced how they bridge to each other. And so the points, I'm just going to briefly, there's a whole book on that, which I don't know if you're carrying, but if not, maybe they'll get it for you if you want it. The points underlying this are sex, pride, self, power, and passion. And you'll notice that sounds something like the 7 deadly sins or the 5 deadly sins, and that they're points that are often really contested and really taken away from us in our current kind of social mores, that people shouldn't be very sexual, or that, it should be very silent, that pride is a sin, that self is not something you should focus on, that power and passion are, best in small doses. So to work magic with them, to reclaim them and step into them and start working magic with them, because these are not just kind of philosophical constructs, they're actually magical constructs, it is revolutionary in itself. And the idea is that working through those, one can arrive at Pearl. Now, of course, we've written a Pearl Pentacle book for someone who hasn't necessarily done iron or worked with iron, but just is drawn to this type of magic, this, I might say, more outwardly focused magic. And something like I ask myself is, well, like I get, here it is, how is it magical? And I want to say to anyone who's worked with a construct, like the Tree of Life, or a different pentacle, maybe, or the Wheel of the Year, or the Turn of the Moon, that they're not just constructs, right? They have their own magical, they're like an entity, in a way. And the more and more that we work magic with them, the stronger we relate to them and receive them. And the Pearl Pentacle and Iron Pentacle definitely do that. Like, they don't just stay like passive little diagrams where we're putting ourselves in again and again. They actually start resonating through the body. They start speaking to us. They start working magic with us. That's our experience. Just going to have a mouthful of water, and then I'm going to read you something. We begin the Pearl Pentacle with a point of love, the crown of the star. Piercing upwards, it reminds us of our connection to the divine, to spirit, and the stars above us, as well as offering a foundational value for the future unfolding of this pentacle. Love has evolved from sex in the Iron Pentacle. The ferocity of immersing ourselves in the life force of everything has created this awareness of and participation in love. Not just love for another or love for ourselves, although definitely also those things. This is the love of the star goddess for each atom and being and moment of time. This is the love that sweeps the tides of the stars through the universe. Love that births babies and saves forests and writes poems and dances the truth of the world. Love is most often thought of as something that we receive and something that we give, or that we long to receive, long to give. But a deeper journey with love ignites the idea that it is something we inherently are and belong to. Each of us is an emanation of love, of atoms in love with each other in our physical forms. each breath part of a love song, kiss of life with the green world, and each moment an opportunity to live as love. When we run the pentacles through the human body, the point of love rests over, through, and above the head. As we are born, tumbling into this world, we receive this invitation to live as love. The crowns of our heads are touched by the starlight from above as we receive love, the life force, and allow it to inspire the whole of our being. I'm going to read you a little piece out of the law section. So that was the intro to love. This piece I'm about to read now is part of the essay that Fio and I wrote on the law point. I've chosen this excerpt particularly for this setting. There's a Greek myth of the goddess Artemis bathing nude in a woodland pool with her attendant nymphs. A human, Actaeon, is conducting a stag hunt with his hounds in that same forest when he spies the naked goddess. The law is that he cannot live, having seen her. Because we can imagine that perhaps the sight alone would be enough to kill him, his death need not be a revenge or punishment that Artemis undertakes, but simply the way things must be. The law. Forests and stags and hounds are sacred to Artemis, so when Actaeon is turned into a stag, and therefore hunted to death by his own hounds, it makes perfect sense. Thus is the law of stags and hounds in forests. We can read the myth forward or backward. By becoming a stag, he has been claimed by Artemis, and all that has happened is he has become closer, bound to and bound by the law of the goddess he already worshipped. Or else what was he doing in her forest with hounds, seeking a stag? The vision of the goddess was granted him as a gift in exchange for the offering of his life. In the Sumerian myth of Inanna's descent to the underworld, she passes through 7 gates. At each gate, one of the objects she wears is taken from her, but they are magical objects, and as each confers powers upon the bearer. At their loss, she loses also those powers. Yet as we lean deeper and deeper into the myth, perhaps asking ourselves what those objects were or what they mean, what we discover is each one was exactly what she could not pass through that gate carrying. It was impossible to pass unless she no longer had it. The object she loses at the first gate is her crown, or what makes her a queen in the upper world. And thus the myth says that a queen of the upper world cannot pass through the first gate on the way to the underworld unless she is no longer queen. The ways of the underworld are perfect and may not be questioned, as Inanna is told 7 times in this story, once at each gate. The ways of the underworld are the laws of the underworld, perilously close to the laws of death. Once a queen is dead, she is no longer the queen. One leaves queenship and all the powers of the living on the other side of those gates. These are the laws. And it's not so much that they may not be questioned, certainly Inanna questions them at every gate, but that the questions make no difference. Questions cannot change anything. The laws are the laws. Inanna's myth is also a revealer of another law, as she, like Jesus Christ a few thousand years later, dies for 3 days and 3 nights before returning to the upper world. Exactly what the moon appears to do from our position on Earth. From anywhere and everywhere on Earth, this is the law. I know it's conventional to have questions at the end, but can I have questions in the middle? I'm allowed to have questions in the middle. Has anyone, this is partly to give me a break from talking, but also just like, has anyone got any questions? I'm aware that I rushed through that at great speed.
I've got one. Like you talk about like witch camps and sort of into sort of the I suppose, the Pearl Pentacle and Iron Pentacle intensives. Can you sort of describe what goes on?
Yeah, I can. So the Reclaiming tradition, which is a fairly small but worldwide witchcraft, contemporary witchcraft tradition, and anyone can. You don't have to identify as reclaiming to attend our three main activities, out there activities, which are public rituals, witch camps, which I'll come back to, and core classes, what we teach. So maybe you do identify as reclaiming, or maybe you're just reclaiming curious, or just want to learn, or hang out with other people doing rituals or whatever. And so anyone can attend those. So public rituals are held in a variety of places, usually for the Sabbats, 8 times a year. They're usually free, or if the venue has to be paid for, minimal cost. And they're a participative style of magic and celebration that is reclaiming style, I'll say. So feel free to find those and go along to one of those. The witch camps, which you asked specifically about, so they're magical intensives. Some of them just go for 3 or 4 days. Some of them go for 7 days. They're in different parts of the world, quite a few in North America, one in Canada. There's one that happens in the UK, usually every 2nd year, and there's a couple in Australia. And the one that I'm at the moment particularly involved with is called Worldwide Witch Camp. It actually happens online for 3 days and nights, 24 hours a day, so that everyone anywhere in the world can attend. And there are things happening in all those different time zones. So maybe I'll remember to plug that again at the end. But Worldwide Witch Camp, because it's online, it has very low overhead costs and thus very low cost to attend. And all of the classes that are taught and the rituals that are presented are reclaiming style magic within that camp, and taught by reclaiming teachers. Obviously, we've got websites and Instagram accounts and a variety of other things, as well as Starhawk, who is one of the original group of reclaiming people from Fairy, and who started the reclaiming tradition. There was a whole group of them. Starhawk is probably the most famous one and has written a variety of books, probably stocked in this wonderful shop. So there are all of Starhawk's books. A couple of other people have also written reclaiming influenced or reclaiming adjacent or reclaiming books. And Fio and I have written Elements of Magic, which also has quite a few contributors. Magic of the Iron Pentacle and Magic of the Pearl Pentacle. And those are based on 3 of the core classes. There are 5 core classes in the reclaiming tradition. Elements of Magic is the first one, and elements in this case refers to both earth, air, fire, water, spirit, but also the foundational blocks of magic, what it takes to create magic, build a successful ritual, find magical working and practice within yourself. Iron Pentacle is usually considered the second class. There's Pearl Pentacle as another class. They don't have to be done in order at this point. There's a class called Rites of Passage, which focuses on trance and story, working with those, and a class called the Community class, or the physical class. Is that comprehensive answer? So yeah, anyone's welcome to attend those events. Sometimes there are requirements, like all our public events, for example, are drug and alcohol free. So people have to sign up to whatever the contract is, but you don't have to be a reclaiming person to do that. Reclaiming is an initiatory tradition, but that's a kind of adjacent part, and that is entirely optional. You don't have to be initiated or an initiate to become a reclaiming teacher, or to attend reclaiming events, or to organise reclaiming witch camps.
What do you achieve with the rituals? Is it something tangible, or something more,
There's
subtle?
Yeah, and that everyone who attended a ritual might have a different answer to that question.
Okay.
But usually they have a very clear intention, which might be, if we're doing an autumn equinox ritual, to celebrate the autumn equinox. It might be very simple.
Yeah.
Witch camps often, not always, around based on a particular myth or story that camp has chosen. For example, Inanna's descent to the underworld, in which case the rituals might be reenacting parts of that myth. And so, again, there might be 100 people at this ritual, for example, and some people might have really personal revelations. Other people might just experience what it's like to be doing a ritual, with 100 people and kind of immersing themselves in the myth. And, you know, there might be also, other people might be learning ritual skills. Oh, that's how you teach a child. Oh, now I know how to lead a spiral dance. You know, so there could be a whole heap of different things happening. And I think that reclaiming rituals are pretty, like we have a structure that is common to reclaiming rituals, but the content is different for every single ritual. Like no witch camp ritual would ever be repeated anywhere else. They're unique every single time. And the way that reclaiming works rituals pretty much always is that we have this strong structure and people get given roles. Like in my, I did a Samhain ritual before I left Australia, a public reclaiming ritual, and I was leading the trance. Now, basically, that's what I got told. You've got the chance, Jane. Okay, that's it. Go away, do it, and bring it. So the other people working the ritual with me, like someone else is leading a kind of personal investigation. Someone else is leading where we name the people who've died in the last year, and I don't know all the depths of that until the ritual's happening. We just kind of trust each other and trust our skills and whatever, that we will bring those pieces to the ritual. But this trance that I wrote, you know, it's not one that I've used before. It's unique to that situation, that place, that time, and all these pieces kind of slot together to build a community ritual.
What about the aquelarres? Sorry, somebody else wants
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, a question about liberty and personal. First, I agree with you about the American definition of liberty. I mean, there is mainly big business to sort of take on people. But how can this liberties use it in our personal life like in this cruel technocratic globalist world? Is there any advice on that?
Yeah, I'd like this. Something that's in this book. Thank you for that question. Something that's in this book is 20, I think that's right, 20 exercises, processes, spells or rituals. So 4 for each of the points. And so one of the ones in Liberty, one of the processes, I wrote it myself, is you sit there and you list everything that you are bound by, basically. Oh, you know, my lease, my work contract, my relationship with my father who I ring once a week, like literally everything in your life that you're bound by. And to try and see like where, you know, those are decisions we've made, things we've signed up to. And then you look for, well, which ones am I comfortable with or which ones do I maybe want more freedom in? And so then you could go a number of ways with that. Like you could just devise a little plan and work a way to create more freedom for yourself. Or in here there's a ritual of unbinding that you could perform magically to kind of, it's both to become conscious of where we're not free and what our freedoms are, and to kind of exercise more choice or power in that, I guess. Like a lot of activists within Reclaiming, but possibly also elsewhere, like work with this point deliberately, you know, like it is my liberty to, in a democracy, protest on the streets or write letters to the papers or whatever it might be, even if I am disputing a law that exists or a corporation or a government. And so, yeah, I don't think it's an easy point. I think it's really gritty and knotty, but there are a variety of ways to work with it. And when we're in a group setting, you know, we might say, well, what are our group agreements? That we've got to, you know, balance the group agreements with personal liberties. And so something, for example, that we might often have as a group agreement is self-care. Actually, you've got to look after yourself. You've got to stand up when you need to, get water when you need to, go to the toilet when you need to, whatever it is. So you've got liberties within the agreement of we're all going to sit in this room and have this meeting or this class for this long. So balancing those things. Is that helpful at all?
Oh, fine. Yes.
Great. And you had another question.
I don't know if, you know, I was thinking of the aquelarres. You know aquelarres?
No.
No. Okay. Because I am from the Basque Country.
Okay.
And there's a huge tradition of witches and aquelarres.
Yes.
Aquelarres is like, you know, when people kind of worship the, you know, the stars or the universe.
Yes.
And they kind of gather, you know, around a fire,
Yes.
you know. So
Yeah.
that is kind of the aquelarre. It's called
yeah.
aquelarre. So I don't know. I just thought maybe.
That sounds beautiful. Invite me along.
Well, I've never been to any. But in fact, some of the mountains in the Basque Country, they're named by different witches.
Yes.
Yeah. So it used to be very pagan in a way.
I mean, that's like a really old tradition, and it's often passed down through families and like location based, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I mean, I do think there's a really good argument, and I personally believe that the 10 points of the Iron and Pearl Pentacle are, I would say, not unrelated to the 10 sephira of the Tree of Life. I think the pearl in particular, you can lay it over the top of the Tree of Life and draw pretty much straight down. This sits on Gevra, for example, law. So I think that Victor's, whatever, magic, I'm going to say magic, was partly transforming that particular glyph, that particular knowledge into a contemporary form. Okay. And I have to say, a bit more user-friendly maybe than the Kabbalah. I mean, I adore the Kabbalah. I've written a whole book on it, but like it was 3 times the length of this. So, I do think that there's a link through, and I think that I actually believe, like this is a belief, this is not proven anywhere, and I don't know that anyone else believes that, but I believe that part of the magical power of these pentacles is because of that, because they're drawing on that. I'm going to read you another little bit. And I've got like 4 minutes to do it, right? Maybe a bit more. Maybe a bit less? What do you say?
No, you've got at least 8 minutes.
8 minutes? Oh. I'll just take a few breaths. So luxurious. 8 minutes. This is in the Liberty section, in fact, so maybe be useful for you. Some say that the road becomes narrower the more we know, or the more dedicated we are to justice and liberation. That is, the choices in our lives have narrowed down due to our previous choices of following our ethics. This concept carries connotations of less options, instead of having personal choice. But the narrow path, as I was taught, is a particularly joyous experience, where the confrontation and complexity of competing choices, a sort of discordance that many of us experience, not feeling confident with our ability to make the best choices, and possibly even feeling controlled by forces outside of ourselves, falls away. Instead, we realize all our previous choices have led us here, and the path ahead simplifies. The choice becomes more one of saying yes, and thus continuing to show up to ourselves and for ourselves, and less a choice about competing possibilities. The more we know who we are, and the more practice we have in making decisions on that basis, the more our way ahead becomes clear. This is a type of liberation, but, as with most types of liberation, it usually leads to more responsibility, not less. The work of liberation is not done alone. The road may narrow because we have become aware that it's the collective, the community, the network who are responsible, and each of us within it. The road narrows because together we may need to resolve our various interests, investments, and agendas into a form that is both singular and specific, holding both complexity and intricacy. It's also salient in the work of dismantling oppressive structures and systems within ourselves and around the world, to consider that this work is never an either-or circumstance. Liberation demands our attention and requires us all to participate, to be responsible, to commit ourselves. The road narrows, bringing clarity and power. I've got this. I'm going to read another paragraph. Once we begin the work of liberty, we discover there's a great deal to be done in this point of the Pentacle, even on a simple or personal level, let alone when we're discussing liberty in its wider contexts. As it happened, we received the contract for this book while we were writing the notes for this essay. How liberating to be offered to have our work published and even at some future point to be paid for it. Then we sit there with 21 pages of legalese to read through, trying to decide if all this is correct before we sign on the dotted line, and suddenly, no freedom any longer. We have to deliver an 80,000-word manuscript on October the 13th, including 10 pieces by other people whom we have undertaken to curate, invite, and edit. Oh, liberty, what were we thinking?
It's always a price to pay.
Yeah, liberty often has a big price, in my experience. The thing about knowledge is that you can't go back. It's irreversible. You can fall out of love. You can slip sideways from the law. Wisdom comes and goes in its presence. Liberty is to be fought for, but rarely gained, or gained only incrementally or conditionally. But knowledge is an absolute. It happened. Bite into this apple and be changed forever. Take the red pill. It's like downloading the latest update. Everything gets rewritten and we're moving on from here. You wanted to continue as you were prior to receiving that knowledge? Bad luck. Knowledge really doesn't work like that. Knowledge might not sound sexy, but it's got gravitas. And when we look again, that's sexy. The serpent whispers, "Thou shalt be as gods." And we've got shivers down our spines. We are tempted. We've bitten into the apple. We've eaten it. The Pearl Pentacle is a living prayer, a profound offering of hope and dedication. It says, "Love is the ground of all being." It sings, "Law is the web of that ground." It dances. Wisdom is the blessing of that web. It reminds us, liberation is the power of that blessing. It whispers, knowledge is the being of that power. The pearl is a promise, an invitation. Perhaps it's even a chance for humankind to get something right. Perhaps it's a dare from the star goddess to live lives that leave a more beautiful world for those who are to come. Love, law, wisdom, liberty, knowledge. Am I out of time or have I still got 2 minutes?
Yeah. No, keep going.
Okay, keep going. Okay, I just want to talk really super briefly, and of course this book also has a lot of information about how to, not just the why to or the wherefore, but the how to, because we're very practical people, how to work with the Pearl Pentacle. But I just want to talk for a moment about how to work with pentacles in general, be they pearl, iron, or something else. So there's heaps and heaps of ways. So one way, obviously, is just to do a trance within. And you might do a trance to a particular point and open it up, or you might actually do a trance through all 5 of them. You can do something that we call running the pearl, or running the iron, or running the energy, which is where you, often standing up, but not necessarily, literally placing love in the head. You might do this as a diagnostic. How am I with love today? And you feel like, oh no, not love. Oh. And you go, oh, I'm a bit down on love today. And you might kind of open it up, do a bit of work. Law, oh yeah, I feel like I'm on my path here. Here I am giving a talk about my book, and like a law. So I feel a strong feeling of law. I come up here. Wisdom, oh yeah, I can feel I'm in the mix. Here I am, my book's in the mix of the book room. And you kind of run it through as a diagnostic to check out where you are at. And, what I noticed when I began to do that, I was like, oh, not love, do I have to think about that? So then coming out of that, I might decide to do some work with that particular point. Because the idea is each one is balanced in itself as well as balanced with each other. Now, another way that I love working with pentacles is that you put them down on the floor, literally you get a piece of chalk, a bit of cord, if you're outside, a stick marking the sand on the beach, and you draw out the pentacle, about this kind of big usually. And if you're inside, you might have little altars at the points or little activities, and you do either a walking meditation, along and around, whilst holding those points or channeling or receiving them, whatever you're doing your magic spell at the altars. And yeah, you can do it with an intention, to create community, to find community, or whatever your intention might be. to work with love. And so you can physically do it. You could do it as a kind of walking trance, but I would more actively work with it. Some people like do it like here's a little pentacle here, so you could trace it or draw it down on the page and like just do it with your finger. Like there's little labyrinths you can do that with, so you can do it with the pentacle. You can draw it out, like this beautiful example here. So, after I've gone, someone might get this, and you could just like draw in it, either with colours or shapes, even not like deliberately, I'm going to put this in love, but just do it, let it happen, and then later come back to it and go, oh, there's a very dark patch there down in law, what's going on there, or just create a work of beauty, or do a spell, like literally as you're working onto the page. Those are some ways, and another way that I also love working with a system, it could be the Kabbalah, it could be the Tree of Life, could be this, is outside in a less structured way, going on a walk almost. And Fio and I in this book, it describes several of the walks that we went on in the Blue Mountains where I live when we were writing this book. So you start the walk and you go, I'm just going to investigate wisdom on this walk. And then just like pay attention to what shows up and have a wisdom walk. And we did this great walk, I think it was in Wisdom, where we were on this plateau in the Blue Mountains, and then we kind of turned and we went down this gully basically inside, and like the whole landscape changed from this immense kind of vast thing to this really narrow, you could only see this far ahead, and we were looking at that through the lens of wisdom. And so you can do that kind of thing. So many things you could do. Somebody could plant a herb garden as a pentacle. Yeah, you've got a question.
Yes. Can you speak about pentagram when it's reversed and used for dark magic?
I don't really use that term dark magic, so what are you meaning by that particularly?
Well, in the film Devil Rides Out, there's a reverse pentagram on the floor, and they use it for sacred rituals, for sacrificial rituals.
I have not done that.
And it's got the two legs at the top, as horns.
Yeah. I think if you map the two pentacles over the Tree of Life glyph, the Pearl Pentacle is upright and the Iron Pentacle is kind of flipped, with Malkuth being in sex. Like that's how it works for me. You can't draw it exactly on the bottom of the Tree of Life, but you can work it. But for me, they are just aspects of life. Like it's not light and dark. It's like, the magic that I personally am working is pro-life, beauty and love, and I'm not really interested in working other types of magic myself, but I don't see that and the pentacle, once you've drawn it out on the floor or something, like I don't really see how it's upside down or the right way up. Like I think I'm a bit more holistic than that, personally.
So I met, years ago, I met somebody who, again, back in the past, she used to use black magic, but for a nasty purpose, not holistic. And she had to stop because it came, it just turned against her, really, so she had to stop. But when we met, I kind of, I don't know how on earth, we're like texting, with each other, and I sent her, and I swear to God, I don't know how that happened, 13 spiders. And she went ballistic. And I still, nowadays, I don't know what the meaning of a 13 spiders is. And I asked, I said, oh, that's very bad omen. I said, yeah, but can you, tell me a little bit more so I understand? And she kind of sent them back to me. I said to me, don't do that to me again. And I was left like, what's that fun? I still, nowadays, I don't understand what happened. I don't know if you...
No, I don't. That sounds like a dream to me. And I understand you're saying it's not a dream, but like you could almost interpret it like a dream if you wanted to. Yeah. That sounds big. Sorry that happened to you. Yeah. I think for me, like Iron Pentacle, as I said, it focuses inside. So I'm working with like who I am, how I'm showing up, what I'm choosing to be in the world. And Pearl Pentacle is really what I'm offering, how I'm going out there. And really, yes, I'm, like I'm left wing. I want political change. I've been an activist at different times, so it's not that I'm just like nice and neat and staying, within the don't make any waves. And witch camps, I think they're fundamental, radical life-changing, extraordinary things, and even doing magic solo or with groups. Like, I think it's incredibly powerful, you know, and outside the bounds of what is considered nice, polite, you know, like the way that we all should behave. And some people, I guess, would call that, you know, dark or negative or whatever. But yeah, for me, both of these pentacles have a really supportive of life and love energy. And yeah, I think that's what I'm pretty committed to. So the books are for sale upstairs. And there's a couple of copies here you can actually have a look at if you want. I'm happy to chat to people one-on-one. And I also have here a mailing list, so I send out a little e-zine 8 times a year on the Sabbats. I always include a spell or a ritual or a process or something with it, but it also has news, what workshops I'm offering or doing. As I said before, something you might want to remember or check out is Worldwide Witch Camp. Worldwide is one word, Witch Camp is another word. It's in the Reclaiming tradition. It happens on the second weekend in November every year, over 3 days and nights continuously, with teachers, classes, rituals, and all the other accoutrements of a witch camp, which are quite a few, happening online. Very participative. It's not the kind of ritual where you sit there and watch people do things on the screen at all. Promise.
Well, thank you very much,
Yeah,
Sandra.
thank you. Thank you.
And,